Hey there, thanks for tuning in to Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new LEGO Marvel Avengers Tower set. A set that has been hotly anticipated. So many people have been dying to get their hands on it. I actually got a chance to see it a little bit early back in September for LEGO Fan Media Days, which was absolutely amazing. I remember being so excited when I saw it in the room, and it's finally here. Let's get up close with all the details. Okay, so here it is, set number 76269. This is the absolutely gargantuan LEGO Marvel Avengers Tower from the MCU, retailing for $500 US and coming with the most number of minifigures ever included in a single LEGO set at 31. It also comes with 3,250 pieces, a full interior depicting scenes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and is absolutely jam-packed full of clever building techniques, details, and more. We'll be taking a look at all the minifigures as we get into the review itself, but of course, the main focus has to be on the tower itself first, and oh my goodness, is this an architectural feat. The Avengers Tower is actually one of the hardest shapes to build out of LEGO itself. It's really difficult to capture the slant of the tower, especially with the curvature going outwards on one side versus the other. You also have the glass kind of curving upwards on the side of the tower on this end, making its way upwards to the landing pad, and of course going all the way to the top, with another very unique architectural feat being this very clever building technique used to invert the way the curve works on these tile elements, utilizing a LEGO Bionicle Zamasphere launcher tube piece. All in all, the tower is one of the tallest LEGO sets ever, with over 31.5 centimeters in height, and barely is taller than the Gringotts Vault stacked atop its roller coaster system, which funnily enough is also a set that was co-designed by Justin Ramsden, so I guess he knows how to make really tall buildings. Now, I'm going to start off with the base of the tower first and just kind of go in terms of the aesthetics of the outside of the tower, and then we're going to work our way to the inside. But before we do that, I do want to shout out this really incredible looking LEGO Leviathan. I was really impressed by how they were able to put this together and really capture the ribcage design on the underside of the model itself. It is actually the first time we've ever gotten a Leviathan other than the mini advent calendar build for a LEGO Marvel superhero set, and I'm not gonna lie, despite it being a little bit of a throwaway side build, this is a really nicely built model. It is fully articulatable. Every single joint has a special ball joint where you can twist it and bend it and really make it look like it's flying through the air. I just love the amount of articulation you can get out of it, and yes, of course, this is far from minifigure scale. It's almost basically micro scale. I feel like it just works really well, and you can definitely see this flying through your city, especially with the scale of LEGO buildings in most LEGO cities. I know I'll be putting this one in my city because this is one of the most satisfying and entertaining side builds that I've ever seen out of any sort of modern LEGO set. The same deal also applies for the Chitauri chariots here. This is actually the second time we've gotten Loki's chariot in LEGO form. The first time was in the OG LEGO Marvel Avengers Quinjet from 2012, and it's really cool to see a more compact version here, complete with controls for him to use. They actually come with two of the chariots, both of which can be flown at different angles, which is really cool because it truly feels like they are assaulting the tower, even though they are a bit anachronistic because obviously Avengers Tower wasn't around at the time of the 2012 invasion. I think it makes total sense to include a few villainous forces to encircle the tower. All around the tower, actually, speaking of minifigure mounts, there are different ways to place the minifigures in very dynamic ways to make them feel like they're part of the scene. I think my favorite here is the usage of the new Big Fig Hulk actually swinging from the broken glass in the tower, which was obviously replicating a scene in the first Avengers movie where he kind of swung and slid down the side of a building, and this is just such a cool way to integrate the Big Fig Hulk into the set itself. I love how now you can actually turn the head, so you actually have that level of articulation that was not possible beforehand, and yes, thankfully the window piece here is just using standard 2 window panes, so if you don't want to have the breaking window, you can easily just disassemble this component here, put the window panes in, and it's super simple to repair the broken window, similar to the Daily Bugle broken window, which also had a similar explosion feature. Altogether, there's all sorts of different minifigures and stands being posed around the building, from Wong emerging through a portal to Tony Stark being thrown off of his office at the very top floor and being actually rescued by the Iron Man suit floating down to encapsulate his body. There's even a space for Hawkeye to jump off the building and fire back at the encroaching Chitauri, and of course, stuff for Falcon, Ultron, and War Machine to fly around the top. Altogether, there's just little spaces for minifigures to be placed, which I really appreciate that you can really just stick them all around the building and have a fun spot for the minifigures to be posed in very dynamic ways. The only downside to this is that yes, the tower is pretty over-reliant on these axle elements to be used all throughout the exterior of the tower itself, and especially if you don't have something plugged into it, it does become a little bit obvious where these connection points are, but again, it is Lego, you can choose to leave them off, but I do actually appreciate how they were able to factor these in because I feel like they do add an extra amount of playability and make it easy to stick figures onto a tower that otherwise doesn't really have a ton of studs on it because they purposefully had to make studs to allow you to attach certain figures because otherwise you don't really have a good spot to attach figures. And of course, there are studs on the base as well, which is really nice because I appreciate how much you can do with different figures around the base of the structure itself. Now, rotating the tower around, there's detail all around the tower itself. There's even a Quinjet parked in the top hangar area, which we're going to take a look at in a second once we clear that area off a little bit. And then going around the back, it honestly isn't that interesting. The one thing I will say about this tower is that it was very, very repetitive. They introduced a new color for the window pane for the set, which is the brand new trans black, which is a really great color to get it in. They also recolored the 1x2 bricks in trans black, which I think look really good and really realistic for skyscrapers, but that comes at the cost of literally putting these panels in every single one of the window panes, which yes, is very, very repetitive, but honestly, it's the price of building a big skyscraper. Skyscrapers are repetitive buildings. They come with a lot of repeating symmetry like this, and that's just kind of the cost of the job. The only final note I do want to note about these panels themselves is that, at least in terms of my experience, for most of the panels, not all of them, but for most of them, the molding mark was incredibly obvious on the panels. They were actually bright white on the other side, and I had to pay close attention to actually have that part face on the inside. You can kind of see the other side of it right here because it was becoming very, very obvious to me on the outside of the tower with very large white dots at the bottom or top of every window. It's not that big of a deal, but I just noticed that for the molding marks on the trans black pieces in particular, they are very, very obvious that there are molding marks there. Thankfully, these ones are on the top of the studs, so you don't see them, but just something I do want to point out about the overall development of those pieces, and hopefully Lego will fix that in the future. Now moving on upwards to the top of the tower here, I just love the way the Avengers logo is done. I'm sure they went through a lot of iterations of this to get it just right. And then you can see the top of the tower with a full interior, so let's go ahead and take a look at that interior right now. The way that the entire tower works is that this whole piece just slides out. It is super easy to just set aside and down this whole curved element right here, which is very, very clever in the way that that is held in and constructed. And then you can see kind of a cutaway view of different scenes of the tower itself. Obviously, this is far from minifigure scale. You'd need maybe like 100 of these, and I don't even know if that would cut it to make it minifig scale, but you can actually see the inside of the building itself, depicting some of the most important scenes from the MCU. This one, of course, being the one in Endgame where Loki dropped and picked up the Cosmic Cube to start his adventures on the Loki TV show. And a nice reference here that I like is the Vita Rush sticker from Lego City, which is actually Lego's own original quote-unquote brand of soda that they use throughout Lego City as its own unique custom brand. But I find it cool how they actually factored into the vending machine here, and you can even see it being advertised by Pim Particles with a Smash Your Thirst sticker because, of course, Hulk Smash. Setting that back in, one thing I do want to note is that it is very nice how all the accessories like that are very easy to remove so you can see the details, and one repeating detail that continues throughout the entire tower is the elevator. It's not a working elevator, but every single floor does have a simulated elevator being built in with special doors. This one's actually been boarded up and says no Hulks allowed, which is really interesting and funny, but yeah, I really like that repeating detail, and of course you can see the main secretary desk right there. Moving on upwards to this area, this is kind of the Tony Stark office/lab area where you can see Ultron and Jarvis battling it out in the back there, as well as some extra computer screens for the special Hulkbuster satellite deploy. And then here is one of the intermediate levels where we have the Captain America versus Captain America fight, and yes, there is a place to literally put the second Captain America once he has fallen from some height and is now knocked unconscious for Captain America's modern version to admire the understuds of his counterpart. Moving on upwards to here, we have the Iron Man workshop area with the dummy robot actually working on Iron Man himself. Very cool to see that being factored into here, as well as a little bit of a look at the Mark II Ultron head. Unfortunately, did not appear in the set. Would have been really cool to get that in the set, as well as a sticker for the rescue armor from Endgame, plus Loki on the screen, one of the Quinjets seen in the sets, and even a Roxxon barrel, a reference to the long-standing oil company as seen throughout many MCU projects, and very notably in Cloak and Dagger. Moving upwards to here, we have something that technically was never in the Avengers Tower canonically. It is the jail that was built for Loki in the Quinjet, but I figured that this is actually a really nice inclusion because it does make sense to include a villain jail in the Avengers Tower itself. There's a nice newspaper saying who is the Iron Man, harkening back to the very first Iron Man movie, and as a really nice Easter egg, there is actually another character included in the set in the form of this character right here, where you can see Arnim Zola on the screen there, who is one of the most iconic Marvel villains, and that of course showcases his depiction from the Winter Soldier and What If. Now moving on upwards to here, we have the entire landing pad. Of course, there are places to put the minifigures down, but you can also actually go ahead and remove all of the different panels up here. So this panel can pop off, and you can see the inside of this area here. This is the lounge for the Avengers, where you can actually see there's a place for the Avengers to enjoy what LEGO would definitely refer to as flavored drinks, and nothing more suspicious than that. Here you can see a newspaper titled Battle of New York, which is a really nice one because that one actually did also appear in stuff like Daredevil, so it's cool to see that. And you can even see a news front here with the WHIH logo in the corner with the Who is the Winter Soldier as the weather update, which is very, very funny to me. Overall, this is a really nice area that blends the hangar area with the overall kind of rooftop penthouse from Age of Ultron, which I really appreciate how they were trying to add in pretty much every single room that you can see in all of the different views of the MCU Avengers Tower, which we've seen throughout the movies, which is really nice. And then we get to one of my favorite building techniques in the entire set, which is this right here just pops outwards. They are just very simply attached. It's a remarkably deceptively simple building technique of just attaching these pieces through the Bionicle Zamasphere launcher elements. But you can actually see on the inside here, there's a copy of the original Avengers comic, the OG one, plus the outline of Loki smashed on the floor. And finally, moving upwards, yes, there is interior detail that can be moved outwards here. There's an analysis being done on the scepter, which unfortunately is just the same old mold we've been using for a while now. No new mold, even though you can see what the scepter is actually supposed to look like on the sticker there. And then you get to the very top with, of course, the little machine that was made for the big sky portal to be made at the end of the first Avengers movie, right there, with Dr. Eric Selvig at the very top. Overall, this is a really remarkably well done set. There's so much playability with the interiors and exteriors of the tower, and despite it being a large gray skyscraper, LEGO managed to include so many more details than I was honestly even expecting to be included in a set like this. This is truly a worthy set, and one of my favorites of the year already. One last thing I do want to note here is as we clear out the minifigures, I actually want to take a closer look at the Quinjet here, because the Quinjet is honestly one of the most interesting parts of the model as well for the side builds. It is remarkably well done, much like the Leviathan. You can actually deploy the wings there. I definitely will be mounting this one from my ceiling because it just looks so good being done at this kind of MIDI scale for the Quinjet itself. You even have the angling engines, the cockpit piece, everything is actually really well done. So just another fantastic mini build in a set that already has a really good mini build in it already with the Leviathan from the Chitauri there. But now I think it's time to take a look at all 31 of the minifigures included in this set and wrap up our concluding thoughts on Avengers Tower, especially when it comes to price. Is this worth $500? Here is the whopping minifigure lineup for the Avengers Tower, and before you ask, yes, there are technically only 30 minifigures here. I mean, if you really want to get technical and not count Hulk, there's 29. I believe the 31st minifigure they are counting is dummy, but given that is a build of regular LEGO parts, that seems a little bit silly to me, and I personally prefer to count the Iron Man microfigure as the final minifigure they refer to because that one at least is a minifigure. Now, out of all of these minifigures, only a few of them are brand new, but the brand new ones are really good, and it's really cool to see a lot of characters that we haven't seen for a long time or sometimes haven't seen ever in minifigure form finally pop up here. We'll get this section of the board focused on first, and then we'll kind of move our way throughout the rest of it. First of all, this does come with a number of Chitauri aliens to actually have opponents for our heroes to fight against, which totally makes sense. I mean, they are pretty standard, there's nothing super crazy going on with them. These ones obviously appeared in the other Infinity Saga sets, so I don't really have much to say, but they are good massable army people to fight against, and I guess it does make sense for a set of this size to have at least a pretty sizable enemy force for your heroes to battle against. Setting them aside, we do have Loki here. Now, Loki is actually a minifigure that did appear in the Avengers Quinjet previously earlier in this year. However, this is probably my favorite iteration of Loki to date. He does come with a hairpiece as well, if you want to use that, and I really love the alternate expression on the back showcasing his mouth being covered up, being carted away to jail, which is just such a good design for the minifigure. Gunmetal gray torso and legs, so overall a really nicely produced minifigure, and I'm definitely a big fan. Next up, we have Eric Selvig. This is a minifigure that is built out of all existing pieces, but that isn't entirely unsurprising. It's kind of is a standard civilian style of figure, but the first time he does appear in LEGO minifigure format, so that's really cool. The torso is reused from Jurassic World, and I believe the head comes from a Harry Potter set, but overall, still really cool, and I feel like it does capture the likeness of the actor very well. Next up on the civilians front, we actually have a brand new minifigure. This is Dr. Helen Cho. She is one of the doctors who appeared treating Hawkeye and whatnot in Avengers Age of Ultron, so it is really cool to get her as a minifigure. Love the alternate expression as well, and that torso is brand new, which is really nice that a new torso was created for the minifigure as well. I can maybe think of other minifigures which probably needed a new torso more than this one, but it is still nice to get another new figure that we've never seen before in any other LEGO Marvel set. Lastly, rounding out the civilians lineup here is Alexander Pierce, the villain of Captain America the Winter Soldier, who does actually make total sense to appear in the Avengers Tower because he did appear in Avengers Endgame in Robert Redford's final acting role for the Avengers Endgame film, which was a flashback showcasing how he was actually there for the events of the Avengers battle. Now, the head and torso are reused from existing figures, so it is nothing super new, but it is still nice to get a character that we've never gotten in minifigure form before, especially the main villain of an MCU movie. Moving onwards, representing the mystical side, we have Wong here. Wong is unchanged from his prior appearances, but Wong is Wong, and Wong makes every set better. If every LEGO Marvel set included Wong, there would be marbillion sales going through LEGO's roof, and we would get only Marvel sets made from LEGO forever, so I can say nothing bad about Wong. Still though, why is Wong in this set? Moving onwards, we have the Wasp. The Wasp is appearing surprisingly for only the second time in minifigure form. The last time we got the Wasp was utilizing a very inaccurate helmet piece for Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018, and ever since this new helmet was introduced for Firefly and DC, but clearly was designed for Ant-Man, people were wondering when we would get an updated Wasp, and it wasn't for Infinity War, it wasn't for Endgame, it wasn't for any of the other movies, but finally we got one for this Avengers Tower, and it is very nice to get. The Pym Particles kind of canister here is a sticker, but I think it is a very nice accessory that I have given to Wasp, and the headpiece is a very common one, but it's nothing too bad. I feel like it fits the character okay. Really like the nice transparent clear wings as well, just look very cool to me. Moving onwards, we also have, of course, the micro-figure version of Ant-Man. Let me see if I can actually find him here. There he is, being held by Tony Stark in his S.H.I.E.L.D. agent disguise. This is a new torso for the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, for Tony Stark, and of course the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents as well, so it's cool to get that. Would have been nice to get arm printing like we got in the last generic S.H.I.E.L.D. agent from 2015, but that was when LEGO was first discovering arm printing and kind of feeling like they could do it on every figure. The Ant-Man micro-figure is, I believe, very similar, if not the same, to ones we've gotten in the past. It does come with two of them, so you do have a spare Ant-Man if you do want to use him, but overall just a nice accessory to add on to your Ant-Man collection. And speaking of Tony Stark, this is a cool variant to get, even though it wasn't really one we necessarily really needed. However, there are two other Tony Stark variants included in the set as well. There is a standard Iron Man outfit included in the Quinjet from earlier this year, but there is an exclusive battle-damaged version of the armor itself, which I find to be very cool to actually have the battle-damaged armor being utilized here because, of course, it was seen throughout the first Avengers movie and throughout Avengers Endgame as well, which is a very nice exclusive sort of reprinting to get for the figure itself. On the back, there's battle damage on the back of this minifigure as well. It's pretty rare for us to do battle damaged figures for LEGO, for us to even get them, so I think that is a very nice addition, even though I'm honestly not super sold on the new Iron Man helmet. I feel like it is just a little bit too bulky, and yes, the original helmet was also very bulky, but I just really liked the way it was molded. Even if the shape was no longer super accurate to the MCU, I just really miss that older molded design. This one is a little bit more smooth and generic that can be used for all sorts of different helmets, but it feels almost too bulbous to me in the way that it's shaped. I don't know, I just kind of miss having the older one. Setting them aside though, we also do have one more civilian version. It is the Legoification of his casual attire from the first Avengers movie, which is identical to the minifigure that has appeared in many other sets nowadays. However, it does have a black neck bracket, so you can actually mount him falling from the Avengers Tower, so Bricklink, Brickset, and everything will count this as a separate variant, which, yeah, I guess, but it is a little bit silly because it is just a regular minifigure that we've gotten in the past with a neck bracket, so nothing super special. Rounding out our main Avengers, we also have Thor. This version of Thor is technically new with the hairpiece. This is a nice hairpiece that was first used for, I believe, Mad-Eye Moody in Harry Potter, but has since been used in a lot of different minifigures, and this is a very clever build, utilizing the new posing element introduced in the No Way Home set, as well as a Ninjago Dragon's Rising lightning element to make it feel like he's really throwing his hammer. I love the way that accessory is done. It's probably one of my favorite ways to display Mjolnir in any sort of minifigure format, and overall, Thor in the first Avengers outfit is pretty good, like the hairpiece, but nothing super crazy going on for the figure itself. As is usually the case with Marvel figures, the legs are unprinted. For War Machine here, this is the same exact figure that we got for the previous LEGO Iron Man Hall of Armor, but thankfully you don't have to buy that overpriced set now if you do want War Machine, because he does appear in this set, and I believe an upcoming magazine as well. Next up, we have a brand new version of Hawkeye, including new printed legs which were made for this set. He does share those printed legs with Black Widow, who is otherwise unchanged from her appearance in the Avengers Quinjet earlier this year, but she does factor in arm printing with the SHIELD logo on the sides, which I think is really nice, and Hawkeye is reusing his hairpiece from the collectible minifigure series, plus the new bow from the series as well, which really does fit Hawkeye very well. I like the torso piece being used. It is a very accurate first kind of Avengers movie minifigure for Hawkeye, but otherwise not much I have to say about this set. Moving on from there, we do have Pepper Potts, who is unchanged from her previous appearance, but I do like that she has this little tablet which was utilized throughout Iron Man 2 and Avengers 1. Next up, we have the Falcon. This is the Falcon from Captain America, the Winter Soldier, as well as the Avengers stuff, so you can kind of see this is an updated version of a Civil War outfit. Personally, I really wish that they used the brand new molded element they made for the collectible minifigure series rather than having them be brick built. I actually asked the designers about this in my designer interview for the set in Denmark, and they said they personally chose to use these for, yes, admittedly, budget reasons, but also because they felt like building up the wings and having it be playable is always better than having it be a single piece, which usually I don't disagree with, but that piece was just so perfect. I really wish they still used it. Still, it is nice that you can actually detach the Red Wing drone. It is a very nice little additional feature there, and it is the most accurate version of Falcon we've gotten to date, other than his collectible minifigure appearance. Nick Fury also appears and is unchanged from the million other Nick Furies we've gotten, but this one does have a sticker with the Captain Marvel pager, which is a very nice accessory to get, and one that I wish I had back when I was filming a stop action, which was one of the first videos I ever posted on this channel. Before Duckbricks officially launched, you can actually sort my videos by oldest if you want to see my MCU tribute video, which was a fun stop action I did at the end of high school. Moving onwards, of course, you gotta have Captain America, but this does actually include two versions of Captain America. They are both identical. These are completely identical minifigures other than the head. One of them has the helmet with the head, and one of them is the standard head, to, of course, depict Captain America versus Captain America in Avengers Endgame, which is really nice, and I actually really like how well the printing turned out for the tan on dark blue, which was honestly a surprise to be sure at how well that turned out, but a welcome one. Moving aside from that, we have the latest version of Scarlet Witch. Strangely, it is the endgame version of Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff. Nice to get the cloth piece, but this definitely is because they did not have the budget to give her a new torso, to update the Age of Ultron version, for instance. Personally, I kind of wish that they swapped out the torso with any one of the figures that got a new torso in the set just to give us a newer version of either the Age of Ultron outfit or even the outfit she wore at the end of the film. I think that just would have been more interesting than the version that we already got in the Endgame final battle, which is a bit anachronistic here, but it's not that big of a deal, and it is still really cool to get Scarlet Witch in the set as well. Moving onwards, she is of course accompanied by Vision, which to me is the standout minifigure of the set. Vision is finally accurate and not based off of inaccurate concept art, which the last many Vision minifigures have been based off of inaccurate concept art, particularly with the color of the Mind Stone. This is such a good minifigure with printing on the actual cape itself. It is a vinyl piece. It actually is from the same cut of the Wasp wings, so these are the same exact material being used here. I just love the way this has been produced. It is absolutely phenomenal. The cape is clear on just the very end of it, and the legs themselves are fully clear, which is very rare for LEGO to do something like that, depicting him first being born. It is the perfect Vision minifigure, and it is probably one of my favorite minifigures of the year. Moving onwards, we do have a Hulk, and we specifically have the Hulk. Now, the Hulk here is brand new for the set, and finally, at long last, they have done the Hulk where you can actually turn his head. Ever since we got the Thanos with turnable head, everybody was wondering when we would finally get the Hulk, and the time has come. He does have studs in the back, so you can actually do team-ups of minifigures riding on his back, and it is so satisfying to finally, after over 10 years, to literally be able to turn the Hulk's head, which is never something we've been able to do out of LEGO. It does come as a separate piece, which is really nice to see that there, and the hair piece is its own piece as well, meaning you can actually have standard minifigures wear it, which is very funny. Now, aside from that, there are two standard S.H.I.E.L.D. agents here. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are pretty much identical in their torsos other than the head pieces. They're just kind of minifigure fodder to add on to the set, to be completely honest, but they're not bad, you know? They get the job done. It's always good to have different S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and I do like the head prints used. They're just very nice head prints. Obviously nothing new for the set, but I do like the diversity included in the head pieces themselves. Second to last, we have Ultron Mark 1, which is, of course, his very first appearance with the Iron Man Iron Legion suit, which is so cool. We have gotten him as a minifigure before for Age of Ultron, and that one had a transparent head, which I thought was really cool. And I kind of wish we still had the transparent head instead of dark blue, but I guess that was just a different look than what they were going for. This is such a cool minifigure. I love the way that it's done. It is produced very well. The printing is exquisite, and I really do love how we actually got this in the set itself. And finally, last but definitely not least, we have the man himself, Kevin Feige, who is shocking that we actually got him as an actual minifigure with a special new torso. Crazy that we got that in Avengers Tower hat printed with the Avengers logo. His facial expression is so perfect. That is Kevin Feige. Like, this is one of the most perfect real person to minifigure translations I've ever seen, and to me it's pretty shocking that they were able to sneak him in as a minifigure. When I talked to the designers, they said they at first weren't sure if they were going to be able to do it, so for many stages in development, they were forced to literally just call him Avengers Fan and not Kevin Feige, and then finally, they got clearance by Marvel to call him Kevin Feige. Unfortunately, they do not have clearance to do it for Stan Lee, so they did look into it. They did want to include Stan Lee, but they were not allowed to, but they could include Kevin Feige, so that's really cool how he actually gets a minifigure, and it's very strange to me, but one that I feel is the perfect minifigure to end our look at all the minifigures of the sets. And finally, as we wrap up, here's a look at the Avengers Towers minifigures in my Marvel minifigures wall, featuring every Marvel minifigure ever made. And it is so cool to have these new variants of the figures in there, like Vision, comparing him against the old ones. Great to see that Hulk with movable head factored into the lineup as well, which is so cool. And even some of the smaller variants, like the Thor with a special version of the hair, as well as even Pepper Potts, who we did get as a minifigure, but not with that exact hairstyle. So there's been a lot of great, fine additions to my collection thanks to the Avengers Tower, and it's really cool to finally have the complete wall of LEGO Marvel minifigures, except for the Comic-Con Amazing Garfield Spider-Man, as well as the Comic-Con Iron Man, because those are the only two Comic-Con minifigures I still need, and I will get them eventually. But very cool to have those in there, and the Avengers Tower minifigure lineup is super awesome to actually have all of these factored in. Overall, Avengers Tower is truly a triumph. I have very little negatives to say about the set itself other than the minifigure selection and inclusion, but it isn't a Marvel set without some questionable minifigure designs and inclusions. For the build itself, which is obviously the main focus point of the set, I have very little complaints, if any. I mean, really the only complaint was sometimes the mold markings on the windows, but I am struggling to come up with negative things to say about the set. I purchased the set myself. I was not sent the set by LEGO. This is not a sponsored review. I just went out and bought it on day one because I was just so excited about the tower itself, and I truly feel like this does live up to the hype, at least in my opinion. Yes, I love almost everything LEGO does, but this truly feels like something special. It is the ultimate LEGO Marvel set. I cannot think of many other LEGO sets this year that top this one. Maybe one, but you know, we're gonna get there when we get to my top 10 best sets of the year list. It is truly one of the most intricate, interesting sets to be done, and they managed to do a skyscraper that actually has very interesting building techniques. The build process itself is broken up into interesting chunks, with this being the first thing you build, and the Quinjet being built literally halfway through the build to allow you to not get too dredged down with all the windows and panels of the tower itself. And despite it being very repetitive for the walls, I never felt bored during the build, and that was because there was always so much going on through the inside of the tower. I felt like I was building a new set every single level that I got to. And finally, as for the price of $500 US, yes, it only has around 3,200 some pieces, which technically, I mean, really people would be looking at maybe a $350 set if they wanted based on price per part. But with the licensing, with all the minifigures, with the design that went into the set, I'm definitely seeing 500. Is 400 a better price for the set? Well, absolutely, everything cheaper is better. But I don't even know if I can justifiably argue 400 for the set. Maybe 450 would be fair. I think 450 I'm feeling a lot happier with, but with massive megaliths of sets like this, it's really hard to judge how much they really should be, and a lot of times it boils down to, well, it's as much as people are willing to pay for it. And if anything's to go by, you can see on Shop at Home how popular this is. People seem to be willing to pay $500 for this absolutely incredible set, so I guess that's the going rate. I'm very curious to see how the set will hold up in terms of the overall look and feel as it gets into other people's collections, as it is integrated into people's cities. And speaking of, I think the best part of this video to end it with is to showcase Avengers Tower fully integrated into my new LEGO city. A bit of a sneak peek in terms of a future video to come. And with Avengers Tower fully integrated into my custom LEGO city, this wraps up our review of the incredible LEGO Marvel Avengers Tower. Of course, let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of the model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Is there anything that you feel was missing from the set? I definitely can think of a few figures I wish were included, but set-wise, I am really happy with it. It is the tallest modular building I think ever, actually. Looking around my city, which has every single modular building, it clears the height of Ninjago City Gardens, and it does clear the Daily Bugle as well. So yeah, it's the biggest one yet in terms of overall verticality, which is so cool. It will be truly an icon of anyone's city. I hope you enjoyed our look at the incredible Avengers Tower. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video and to this review. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of the set, and of course, bye for now.